I was such a fan of the Legion of Superheroes when I was a kid that I always wanted to work with this version of the characters that was designed back in the 1970s. They all had kind of sexier looking costumes that provided almost bikini-like effects for a lot of the characters, both for the men and the women. And there was a sense of the liberation of the age in the 70s. Long hair came into vogue, and there was a lot of feathered hair in some of the cases for the women. And it was designed by one of my favorite costume designers, the legendary Dave Cockrum, who designed the modern X-Men as well as the original Guardians of the Galaxy. And he did this first. He gave all these redesigns to every character. So when I got to create this single painting, I had no gig that had demanded it. It wasn't a deal I had made with anybody, so I started on the piece of art, worked on it for off and on through a year, pitched it to get it made into a print, which it luckily got accepted because it otherwise is a version of the characters that was no longer standing. This was sort of my love letter to the artists that defined that era and characters that really impacted me when I was a young child.
Welcome back, everybody. It's time again for another Word Balloon Live, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. I have a feeling my face is going to hurt from smiling while talking to these two people because it's great to see Kelly Sue DeConnick and it's great to see Phil Jimenez, and it's great to talk about their upcoming Black Label book. And I got the cover. Stand by. Wonder Woman Historia. Bum, bum, and I'm covering poor Kel. Stand by.
It's all good.
Well done, kids. I love this issue. I think a spoiler-free way of describing it is a combination of Hippolyta Year One and the world of the Amazons in the sense of the world of Krypton. That was the vibe that I was getting from this.
Ooh.
Oh,
I like both of those things.
yes.
Would you like to write our copy from now on?
There's your first pull quote, hon. There you go.
Thank you.
Seriously, Phil, it's great to see you again, man. You've only done Word Balloon once before when we had the big jam session with the Benson sisters.
Yes.
And everybody 2 summers ago. And Kel, you're my spiritual little sister. You know that. You and Fraction. I love you both.
I'm a regular.
You are a regular, and I appreciate that. Seriously. So, all right, talk to me about conceiving this book. I mean, seriously, this is really, really exciting. And I think long overdue for, the backstory of Wonder Woman.
Yeah, so this is so funny. I've been asked this a few times recently because for obvious reasons, because it's coming out in a couple weeks. And I can't actually remember if it was Mark Doyle or Andy Corey who called me. One of the two, Mark Doyle or Andy Corey, called me when Black Label was first formed and said, we think you would be a good fit for this, and would you be interested? And I was like, I don't know. I have a couple DC characters. Let me see if there's anything in particular I would want to hit. And then it was like Lois Lane, who I won't touch. You and I have talked about it before because I'm like, I'm saving that one for me. And Nocturna, who that would sell gangbusters to the 4 people who remember who Nocturna is. And then, thank you. All right, Phil, that's our follow-up. And then I had seen the Wonder Woman movie and felt like I need to do something with the Amazons, and was was really into that. And then I started thinking about that and had this notion that like it just kind of got big. It got grand. And so I ended up pitching this, like the pitch document is for 9 64-page issues. So if we were to complete all of them, it would be longer than From Hell. Like the thing. And but I was like, I haven't seen, I wanted a Greek epic. I had gone through a whole thing where I was listening to a lot of Greek classic history and Herodotus, and I'd been listening to a lot of that just sort of on my own because it kind of calms me down. And I was struck by the fact that I couldn't think of a epic with a woman at the center. And so that was how it was pitched. And then I think it was, so I asked for Phil, and then I think it was Andy Corey who called Phil, and Phil said no. And then I said to Andy, would it be bad form if I called Phil directly? Would you ask him if that would be okay? And Phil was kind enough to take my call. And I begged. And here we are.
Awesome. What made you change your mind, Phil? Other than Cal, but what did she say to you that was like, all right, you're right?
It was sort of God. Although I could be reshaping my memories in my brain. It was Kelly Sue. I had left DC after Rebirth and Superwoman, which is not a particularly fun job. And I was just like, done, right? Like I'm out, and it's okay. And then Kelly Sue called me, wanted to do this thing, and my concern was, and 3 years later you understand why, issues of pace and production, and I was just like, I was afraid of generating. But then, and again, these are my memories, I don't know if they're false or not. When you get a call from Kelly Sue DeConnick, that means something. That's actually quite powerful. And what really hooked me, I have to say, is Kelly Sue's call, but also the idea of Kelly Sue, when we talked about the Amazons and her take on them, it kind of blew my mind, having worked with those characters now for 25, or at the time about 28 years, done a lot of written papers, done academic work, lectured. What thrilled me the most about it was I believe, the first time a woman would have written the history of the Amazons in comics ever. We've seen other women authors and artists tackle Diana and sort of reinterpret her childhood and tell the stories. But we had never had a woman, and an avowed feminist no less, retell the story of the Amazons and Hippolyta. And I'm pretty sure this was the first time. So it was this mix and match of longstanding love of Wonder Woman, the opportunity to work with Kelly Sue, and then the opportunity to learn a new way of thinking about characters I thought I knew everything about, through eyes that I will never have, which are not just Kelly Sue's, but a woman's. And so that's actually what thrilled me. It was a complete reimagining of this mythology that I thought I knew so well.
I understand. Are you co-plotting? Did you? I mean, because I know, Cal, there's going to be another artist in the spring, and in fact, he's revealed it at conventions. Can I say?
You can, yes.
Okay, Gene, right? Gene Ha.
Mm-hmm.
Gene Ha's going to do book 2, and he's very
Gene
excited.
Ha's doing book 2, and Nicola Scott is doing book 3.
That is so great to hear.
Yes, and they are absolutely incredible. But those books are very collaborative with those authors because that's how I work. But we would be everyone on the team would acknowledge that Phil is a co-creator of all of it. It's
okay.
I mean, because like if I was able to, I could easily publish the script for this, and I'm sure at some point we'll put out something that has scripts. But what that wouldn't include, and this is what I find over the years with the way I tend to work, I'm very, very collaborative, and my partners are so important to me. And I think of the work as a conversation. I think the art is a product of it is our conversation, right? And so what you don't get when you get the script is the 19,000 texts that Phil and I send back and forth, or the hours we spend on the phone, or any of that. So there is certainly anytime I work with an artist, we make the deal that I have the last word on words and they have the last word on pictures, and we divide the other creatives on the team sort of falling under, not under, but like in groups with. So I work very closely with the letterer, and Phil works very closely with the colorists. And so it would be very hard to separate anything out as being, who did what. And like, sometimes I think we forget whose ideas were what.
The thing I want to say, pardon me for interrupting, is that not one image in this book would have occurred without Kelly Sue's script and my conversations with her. Everything in this book was inspired by her take, by her words, by her approach, and by our conversations. That said, there is stuff in this book that is not in the script, but was inspired, and through conversation, I said, hey, can I do this? Hey, can I do that? Can I put this moment in? Yes. Which to me is like, I think sort of exactly what she's talking about in that collaboration. But I do like to say that nothing, like everything that I drew was ultimately inspired by what I read, and by Kelly Sue herself, and then again by this take, which I find invigorating beyond imagining. One of the stories I like to tell is that in our initial conversation, one of our initial conversations, Kelly Sue was Kelly Sue said, so you need to know I reject Marston outright. And I was what? My favorite joke is, how dare you, that does make sense, right? And so once that was off the table, once I realized that this was new, right? So the basic mythology is there, but then it's a completely new way of seeing and reinterpreting these characters. My goal was to learn, right? And despite whatever opinions I had, of which there are many, my goal was to think like, I'm never going to have an opportunity to work with an author like this again, or that was my thought. I want to learn as much as I can from this process. And specifically, I want to learn a new way of seeing these characters. So.
Okay. Phil, you also mentioned to me before we started recording about some of the imagery in there, and you made the allusion to, if not Easter eggs, something else. And I'll let you describe what you meant by what we were talking about.
Oh, well, as you mentioned, it was a Black Label book. And when the book was pitched to me, one of the components was that Black Label was new at the time. It was supposed to be A-list artists. And I felt like an A-list artist in a long time. And as I mentioned, Superwoman was kind of not the most fun gig. And so coupled with Kelly Sue, I was like, wow, this means I need to bring A game. So I took the Black Label part of this also very seriously. Like, if I'm going to do this and if I'm going to be invited to be part of this crowd, I need to perform. So as I mentioned to you earlier, my Hulu subscription is like $5.99 a month. these books are like $8. I'm like, I need to give somebody something I believe, something I would think would have the same value, something, a work that you could return to over and over and over, find something new. So in most of the panels, there is, I'd say about 80% of the panels, some sort of Easter egg, a Wonder Woman related, a mythological related. There's some choice that I made that has a backstory, and expand, like, again, in my head, it's either expanded story of a character presented or just something I think will be neat to talk about on a convention panel. But my hope was to give people $8 worth of material that they could return to over and over and over again.
Understood, man. Kel, as far as here's a couple of comments from everybody.
Yeah,
Yes.
I want to weigh in on some of these.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Okay.
So first of all, to clarify again, because Kel said at the beginning, some people have jumped in. It is 9 issues.
Well, okay. It was pitched for 9 issues.
Oh, excuse me. So tell me, Kel, how many?
So it was. So they were like, slow your roll, girl. We are going to approve it for 3 issues, and we'll see how it does. So y'all need to buy it because I got 9 issues to finish.
Atta girl. Damn
All
right.
Wow. So
Wow.
right now it is 3, but I didn't take the story arena from 9 and squish it into 3. I just did the first 3 because it's a full unit. So yeah, you should probably make sure that you pick up a couple of copies for holiday gifts so I can get to do those other.
Here. Absolutely. Well, and also I will say you guys were kind enough to let me look at the first issue. And as Phil said, I mean, some of these, it's not even fair to call them panels because you've got a lot of double page spreads in there, which is so much imagery that people are going to spend a lot of time on certain images. I will describe it, and hopefully Kel won't kill me for describing it, but there's this great series of Greek urns that is just so majestic. I didn't want to necessarily show it if I wasn't allowed, because even one image that I picked, I was like, you can't show that. And I'm like, all right, it's cool. No, I don't want to fuck anything up. You guys know that. But it is so exciting. And especially, you're talking to the original Greek restaurateur, man, that knows his mythology.
Hey!
So, come on. Are you kidding me? No, you guys nailed it. And it's so, I really look forward to showing this to some members of my family who really do appreciate Greek mythology.
Oh, that makes me so happy, John. That makes me really, really happy.
You guys nailed it.
Like, okay. And then Phil, all right, my husband gets very uncomfortable when I gush about him. So I don't know if you have this issue, Phil, but if you do, just prep yourself because here it comes. You get your toes in little fists, turn bright red, whatever it is. But my dude was already one of the best that's ever worked in our medium, and he somehow has delivered like just game-changing work. And some of it is like game-changing work where it's like, Phil, you didn't have to do that. I don't know why you did that. So it's things like there's one panel in particular that is on a spread that is at least an 8-panel spread with a full bleed background. And oh no, it's not 8. It would be 16 because there are inserts in each of the 8.
Okay.
And then in one of those 8, there's a character that's standing on a floor, and the floor is like has an illustrated story on the floor. This tiny, he drew the whole story on the floor. Drew the floor that she's standing like it's. Their armor has narratives on it. Can you imagine being Jean Ha? Can you imagine being Jean Ha, who is so incredibly gifted, and then being like, oh, I have to follow that? Like, I'm Jean, I'm very sorry. But also, like, seeing Jean and Nicola being like, like, God damn it, Phil, is really fun.
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah.
Go ahead, Phil.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, the ego part of me, it's true. So for example, each of the Amazons, their armor is unique to them, has specific narrative elements. Like everything was very thought out. I didn't want to create generic characters. That said, I also realized, so kind of the elephant in the room is this book took a long time to make. I didn't think it was going to take this long. 2 or 3 reasons for that. One, I'm just inherently slow and a bad choice maker. 2, this is my first book that I'd ever done entirely digitally, or not like on an iPad. I did it all through the Procreate app. So there was a learning curve. I spent way too much time on the internet, and admittedly, the pandemic threw me off quite a bit. That said, there was just also a lot of labor, and physical labor in the work, a lot of design choices, and so I think, if nothing else, people will see that, right? Like I was not being lazy. Where was I going with all of that? Oh, but I also wanted to create a world, like in my head, like it's I keep going back to the script, because the script in our conversations I found incredibly inspiring. And part of it was because Kelly Sue writes, I would say, I've talked a lot about this, like I want to use volume 1 as a teaching tool, because there were descriptors in there, particularly of Hera, where I knew that character instantly. I knew who that character was. I knew how that character stood. I knew how that character dressed. And there wasn't really art direction. It was emotive. It was tonal. It's like this. And everything was, I could see it so clearly. So part of me wanted to impress Kelly Sue. Part of me wanted to impress my bosses. Part of me wanted to say, like, I know this took a long time. Here's the reason why. And then it was also self-indulgent. Like, when am I ever going to get the chance to redesign Amazon armor this way? That said, I do feel really terrible for Jean, who sort of had to pick up after me. I didn't design for Jean, I designed for me. And I think he did a really remarkable job. Remarkable of like picking up after, because it's like what he inherited, I think, was not easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, all I can tell you is he was incredibly excited about it when we talked about it in Baltimore. So that's great, and I'm glad you've already received pages. It's a tall order, man, and same goes for Nicola. I agree with Raj Patel here, who says it's a damn shame that the whole book is digital. I would have loved to have bought a page. Having seen the book, I hear you, man, because, yeah, really, Phil, there's a lot of incredible imagery here that but then again, would you be able to have painted it with that kind of confidence or whatever, the way that you can go back, fix things and everything in digital? Would you have been capable of this level?
I would not have. The first 20 or 30 pages, there are actually the first 8 or 10 pages I did on boards in ink. Where did Miss Kelly go?
Oh, we lost Kelly. All right, she'll come back.
And this isn't really pertinent anyway. So there are existing pages, because I did pencil breaks for almost all the pages and tighter pencils for the beginning ones. I just found I was losing time by penciling, inking, then scanning, then re-inking. So I just did less and less of it as the pages went on. The other thing I learned, as I mentioned earlier, and this is just technical stuff, but what digital allowed me to do was bring in all those textures that I think is what really makes that work effective. And that's something I could not have done in ink. I don't know, other people do.
Well, it's cool that there are some physical pages, because, again, I imagine that they will command top dollar, and rightfully so. It's really... Oh, who was your colorist, Phil?
We had 3 colorists.
Wow.
Yes. Another fun story. So we had 3 colorists come on. I'll tell that story later. But they all did an enormous amount of work. The first one was Ron Fajardo, who I'd been working with for about 10 years. And then to help him was Brian Miller at Hi-Fi, and then finally Arif Prianto had to kick in at the end. A lot of it just came with I'm just not sure DC understood the workload that we were asking of the colorists, and just for scheduling reasons, it was very helpful to keep their brains intact to hire some help. And ultimately, I think it's actually all very beautiful.
Absolutely,
it is. I'm going to jump in and answer one of these questions because I'm concerned that somebody misunderstand. Tevye, yes, that's exactly the one. Tevye, the book is a physical book. It will be a physical printed book. Phil's talking about when he was producing the art, that it was, some of it was produced digitally. So it is in fact a physical book. Absolutely.
But the book will be physical in comic book stores and bookstores, I'm hoping, and
yes,
other venues. Yes, you can buy it and read it in your hands.
That's awesome. December 9th, I want to say.
November.
Better be November 30th.
Oh, November. Excuse me. Okay, because some color. I think your preview was available through December 9th, and maybe that's where I didn't understand. That's great. So right after Thanksgiving, everybody, the following Wednesday. Boom.
It got pushed twice for paper shortages.
Yeah.
So that's why you're scaring me. It's very possible it's been pushed again and we haven't been told, but I don't think so.
I don't think so, Kel.
I don't think so. I think it's November 30th.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm sure I made the mistake. No. Absolutely.
Okay.
Wayne wants to know, and I think it's an obvious yes, did you find working with the Black Label line more liberating than you would had this been the main line through DC?
Yes, in every way. Yeah, I don't know if Phil could describe the last 3 years of his life as liberating, but
wow.
But yeah, as far as we were really able to, we were able to take 3 years to do it, which you couldn't have done with a in continuity book. Sure. And we weren't tied to continuity and just sort of encouraged to swing big. So absolutely, I love the Black Label line. And also I want to jump in on the 3 year thing too, which is to say that my only regret about it taking 3 years is I don't know what that does to Phil's page rate. There's just like no way that he was appropriately compensated for this book for how long, like the amount of labor that he actually put into it. Yeah. But yeah, I don't look at it like every day of those 3 years is on that is on the pages, and I am, this is a whole other conversation that we could have, but I think as a solidly middle-aged person now, I'm at this point in my life where I'm trying to balance needing to get work out and like the demands of our particular industry where the train's got to leave the station, and also like this sounds morose, and I'm not a morose person in the least bit, but like I'm about halfway through my life, probably more than, and that just is what it is. And I don't know how many more projects I get, and it's really important to me. I've learned a lot over the last 20 years. And, I feel like I'm sort of going into the third of my career, and I would like to do less and better. I want to make every swing I have left count. And that's really important to me. And I don't, I know that Phil, this is a weight that you carry, and it's something that you bring up a lot. And I know it is heavy on you, but I truly, I truly have no regrets about the amount of time that it took. I think it took the amount of time it took to be what it is.
Yes, and I agree. I am anxious about it. So because I'm thrilled with the final results, and like you, I'm sort of like, okay, done, right? I think really what it comes down to is when I took the gig, I told Andy and Didio, this is behind the scenes stuff that I maybe shouldn't share. Whatever you do, because when I took the gig, we hadn't started.
Okay.
Right? You pitched me. I was like, yes, I did that pitch piece of art that became our cover. But I told them, I said, whatever you do not put this on schedule. Don't announce it. And it was in the Hollywood Reporter almost a week later. And my problem with that was it set the sense that we had already started, right? And it was coming. And we took a couple months to sort of get in our rhythm. I was learning the iPad. There was this learning period. And then of course they started asking, they want to know like, I don't know if you remember, but they wanted to schedule the first 3 the first year. And it's like, I can't do that. Like I can't. So I'm in many ways, I'm just self-conscious about it. Not because I don't love that final product, but because the way it was announced just sort of set me up to like, oh God, I'm catching up to the announcement. If that
right. Yeah. Oh, totally. And and our industry is such, and the churn is such that we like. I've gotten to the point where like I think I've described this in this exact way before, but like sometimes you're doing press for something you haven't finished yet, and it's like it's like you're sitting at I don't it this is not my process, but like it's like you're making a painting and someone keeps tapping you on the shoulder asking you what the painting is about. And you're like, I don't know, it's about yellow right now, I don't know. Like when I'm done, it'll tell me what it's about. Right now, yellow. You're gonna ask me again in 10 minutes, green. Like there's this, yeah.
But the churn is part of it. That said, sort of getting over this idea that things happen for a reason. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but thinking about the Greek fates, the one nice thing is, pardon me, this book is coming out in my 30th anniversary in comics, right?
Wow.
So I started drawing my first comic in October of 1991.
Wow.
And then during that time, while I was working on that first comic, Karen Berger and Tom Peyer asked me if I would do 4 pages of War of the Gods, which was Wonder Woman's 50th anniversary book. And I was like, yes. I remember doing those pages in the offices, which was unusual at the time, but they were just passing me these pages, and I sat there doing them. And so 30 years ago, the same month, for Wonder Woman's 80th anniversary, this book comes out. So I had not planned that, but for me, it's also just a lovely circle. Starting with the 50th and then kicking and now here we are on her 80th anniversary, 30 years of comics, ending with Wonder Woman. So I'm quite happy with that. Just self-conscious because I'm not a fast artist, is all.
Okay. Well, I'm not a fast writer either, so
yeah.
Well, that's nice. Here, Peter says you had to be a kid back then, Phil. You look 30. There you go.
Peter,
you both look 30. Don't kid yourself. I say that as the senior man on the call.
Really quickly about Kelly Sue, this is just a strange non sequitur, but you're talking about writing in green. So one of the many, I guess this is a lesson. I remember early on when you were writing. Whoops! Oh my goodness!
It's all good.
My iPad fell.
It's all right, man.
I remember, and I love this memory because I use it as a teaching tool. When you were writing and you were like, I'm bored. And if I'm bored, the readers are going to be bored. And you had written that you had kind of crafted this thing and you tossed it all aside and started over. So this whole sequence, you're like, no, I'm done. This isn't it. And then this whole new sequence came, which was 1,000 times more powerful. and emotional and resonant and right? And it is such a vivid memory, because I think so many writers, creators, artists are not prepared to throw away something that's not working, right? The lack of preciousness with that work and the desire to make it the right thing, and you did, is still I talk about and I teach from all the time. It was one of those, yeah. I don't know where that comes from. I don't know how that fits in this conversation. But as you were talking about, as you were making the analogy about this is green, this is yellow, it's such a vivid and positive memory of something I learned working on this project.
No, and people are asking what the process is differently from Black Label, and you've mentioned already in terms of deadline and likely more freedom to take the story where it goes. I mean, this is an adult story in the best ways, not in the puerile way, but truly it is adult material, and it should be, because the subject deserves it. But yeah, are there any other comments regarding the Black Label process beyond the ability to start over again and take your time until it's right, or any other things?
I mean, yeah, you're not tied to continuity. We have larger pages. That was a really surprisingly difficult thing to adjust to. And that's maybe the one bummer about, well, from my perspective, I feel like I finally sort of had my rhythm for understanding what Phil could do with this additional space.
Yeah.
And now I'm switching to Jean, and then I was figuring out what Jean could do with the additional space as I'm getting ready to work with Nicola. And it was like, well, God damn it. Because it's different for every artist, right? Everybody
Absolutely.
has a very different style. And whenever you start to work with someone, and I always ask about, what are their panel count preferences for action, or for, just like, do you have a default, like, panel count preference that you're comfortable, like where do you settle in? And it's interesting, every artist hates me for asking that question and never knows how to answer it. And I understand why, because they're like, because they don't think they have a default, because they think it's, whatever it calls for is what I'm going to do. But I have to adjust my thinking based on, like, where I think they start feeling crowded and where I think they start feeling like too airy. And so I usually end up making a decision about that based on my studying their work, but I always ask, and then they're always flummoxed and annoyed with me for asking. But I also ask them other things that are nice to answer, so it's okay. But and then Phil early was like, however many panels you think it needs, I will make it work. And then he also, like I have said many times, I think I've never written a page that Emma Rios didn't add panels to, which is completely fine. Because that's not, I'm not trying to out design their hand or make a prescription. I'm telling a story. This is what I think we need. If you think we need more or less, great. You're the visual person, Yeah. And I might, and I usually explain, I do a thing at the top of the page where I explain what the scene is or what the page is, and then I do in each panel, you know, I'll say, like, not always, but often, if it's something that I think needs explanation, I'll say why that's there. You know, like, you know, I think we need a beat to breathe here. So, you know, whatever it is. But we part of the, and this is good. I'm super glad I did not script 64 pages and hand it to Phil. That would have been terrible. So we did, all 3 books have been done very much like we do Pretty Deadly or Bitch Planet, a chunk at a time so that I can adjust.
Sure.
And I think that really adds to it being a collaboration and a conversation.
Awesome. You know, Dave is asking, if we get a book for Phil, will you come back? Or is the plan for every book to have a new artist? Now, again, right now you're only committed to 3. That's all DC will allow initially. But as Kel has said, she's ready to go 9 if we get the green light. But yeah, I don't know, Phil, what do you think?
Honestly, if I was to come back, I feel like I'd want to close it out.
Yeah.
Sure, bookend it. Yeah.
I feel like I'd want to bookend it. I myself, so one, this is legit. Like when Kelly Sue first asked me, another concern I had was I was feeling a little. So I was feeling a little odd about. One of the things that really excited me about the book was having a sort of forward-thinking feminist on the book and giving it a decidedly feminist point of view. And I really was very excited about the idea of women working on these characters who are in many ways DC's premier female characters. So one of my hems and haws was like, can I do, and am I the guy for this, right? Like, sure. or should this, in a perfect world that would matter, but it really matters to me a lot. And so one of the things that has really excited me, for example, is Nicholas Scott coming on, because I do believe that in the story of these particular characters told by Kelly Sue, I'm actually very excited about these different voices. I don't know how she feels about it, but interpreting different periods of history, of Amazon history. I think there's actually, that's actually very exciting to me, potentially. But I do like, just for the continuity of it, right? Like the idea of beginning and ending. I like, so if that's where I'd love to close it out.
That would be amazing.
That's cool.
And like, yeah, I mean, Phil and I have become family, you know, like, and so not doing every issue together doesn't mean we aren't part of each other's lives, and this certainly won't be the last time we work together, you know? And to have the opportunity to work with artists like Jean Ha and Nicholas Scott, and because of the work that Phil has done, like there are these really high level artists that are like, I could maybe show off a little, you know, and like I'm the beneficiary of that because I get to learn from everybody. So I think it's great.
Very exciting. Go ahead.
Something. I'm so sorry. Kelly Sue said something when we started about, I believe it's the first, either 5 pages of the first scene of each issue or each arc being your opening compact, right, with the reader. And that was another thing I wanted with this volume, is that this is the opening compact, right? This is your set, like this is your setup. And I think that the weight of that was one of those things that I carried around, like that this was our promise to the readers. Mm-hmm. And so that meant a lot to me. And I think it's another thing that probably impacted my pace, but also made me dive in as heavily as I did.
And there's some really cool stuff too with that we've done. So the book opens with tabula rasa, right? There is a page with no art, just words, because it is because the notion is that we are starting, like the conceit is you think you know the history of the Amazons, because you've read it over and over again in different forms. But history is written by the victors, and in the war between the Amazon and the world of men won. So the history that you have is their history, and this one is ours. And on the opening page we say that, like, probably neither of these is true, right? That there is none that is objective, but that is theirs. This is ours.
Sure.
And the idea is that we are, and we Phil and I have talked about this a lot, and how this changes the approach. And so everyone is welcome to read this book, but the book is for women. Okay.
Yeah.
So it centers a female readership. Everyone welcome, but it assumes that it is talking to a young Amazon who wants to learn the history of her people. And so this is the history of her people as told by her people. So that's the concept going in, right? And that's why we did that, the library variant, the one that kind of looks like a textbook.
Yeah.
And yes, Nerdette, 3 people have asked about Nubia, and we will get to that in a minute, I promise. So that's why we did that idea of the library variant, because this is your textbook. This is your history, right? And there's another conversation to be had about the Olivier Coipel variant cover, which is just like, but anyway, yeah, there you go. So that said, the first page of the first issue is just text. The second issue adds 1 image. The third issue adds that image and another. So each of these artists will add, they'll redraw. So I'm just going to spoil it. Jean has added a shield to the first page. Nicola is not going to decide what to add to it until the end, but pretend Nicola decided to add a sword. Then Nicola would redraw Jean's shield and add her sword. And then should we get to go to 4, the artist on 4 would redraw those 2 and add another element. And the idea is we took that tabula rasa, and now we're building the history out, right? So blank slate, and then here, watch us build the history on this first page. Then it goes through this text, and then it says, it in this book, it says it begins with the principal goddesses, and it introduces these 6 goddesses. And then on another page turn, a double page spread of Hera, right? Because where 6 goddesses get 2 pages, Hera gets 2 pages.
Sure.
And in every issue, we have an invocation to those goddesses, asking their blessing as we continue our history, right?
Yes.
But it also serves as a kind of Rosetta Stone, because on the first one, you see, this is Phil's style, and this is how he presents these goddesses to you, and these are the symbols that he uses, right? And then in Jean's, you see it's the double page spread of the 6 goddesses, his versions of them, his symbolic language. Turn the page, double page spread of Hera. This is his Hera. Right? So in every book, you'll have those very same opening 5 pages that will be the Rosetta Stone for each stylistic take. So you have an understanding of what you're getting into when you are looking at the story through the eyes of this particular artist. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's almost like they're forgive the biblical comparison. It's like their testaments. Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Which I love. I think, and again, as Kel knows, because I've described myself this way to her many times, as a knuckle-dragging Neanderthal man, despite this book being for women, it's very inviting. Everybody's going to enjoy it because, again, it's got that World of Krypton vibe where, as you guys have said, the Amazons, we know a little bit here and there. Each reboot tweaks things a little bit, but here's a real chance to really explore where they came from, what the War of the Men was all about, and really, Hippolyta over the years has assumed the mantle of Wonder Woman with the JSA and other times, currently with the Justice League. That's great. Now we get that real year one story of what made Hippolyta the strong warrior that she is.
Yeah, and and like I'm wary of putting people off when I say that this is for women, but here's the thing. I've been reading books that centered the male reader my entire life, and I love those books, and I have been invited to read them, and no one has said you're not allowed to buy it because you have girl parts, right? It's like, right. It's fine. So actually, I think that was a sort of gender reductive vibe, or I shouldn't have said girl parts. I'm learning, people. I'm learning. Our understanding of gender is evolving, not parts related. Nonetheless, no one has asked me to take a quiz about my gender before I'm allowed to buy a book. Buy the book you want to read. It's fine. But it does change the approach who we're centering, right? And it's, you don't have to be you don't have to be centered to enjoy a thing. And you may not even notice, quite frankly, but we do.
That's great. Again, all I know is great story, beautiful art. I think, again, a subject that needs to be expanded on. I'm glad that DC has given you guys at least 3 books, and here's hoping for 9. And let's see more stupid artists get on and really draw the shit out of this thing. Again, I'm really excited. I haven't seen any of Gene's work. I obviously haven't seen anything that Nicola has possibly done yet, but this is really exciting. Now I'll take a couple unless you want to get back to, as Nerdette said, when a couple people have asked about Nubia. Do you want to say more, or
sure? Nubia is in the book, but Nubia is probably not the Nubia you know. And first of all, you should be reading the Nubia series. If you're not, please support their incredible series. I feel like they're a sister book because we had a lot of confluence in scheduling and in offices, and we're huge fans. So please pick that book up. So the Nubia in this book is not the Nubia in that book, and she doesn't have a huge part right now. However, that said, would you put up the Coipel cover again?
Sure, stand by. Boom.
Okay. That's Antiope, who might be your new favorite Amazon.
There you go.
So please, we have a tremendous breadth of diversity in our cast of Amazons. They are racially diverse and physically diverse and temperamentally diverse.
Sorry, I meant this one.
If I may, just very quickly, because for those listening, because I've been getting this a lot. Clearly, I'm a sort of George Perez acolyte. Clearly, I worked on the Wonder Woman that George Perez created. And a lot of people are assuming that because I came back to this book, it is the Perez Wonder Woman sort of revisited. It is not. And I really am hoping that people temper that expectation. This is a standalone book. It is non-continuity. It is an entire reinterpretation of that mythology, reinterpreted, quite frankly, through Kelly's lens, and my art. And so there is a Nubia. She looks vastly different than any Nubia that you've ever seen. But as Kelly said, she's probably not the one that you think she is. And I just really want people to temper those expectations, that this is not just a simple carryover from the continuity books. This is a standalone thing, and needs to be evaluated as such.
Understood, 100%. They asked Phil, would you come back and consider drawing the Legion again?
No.
Okay. Where are you on the big two, Phil? I mean, do you want to do your own thing? I mean, where do you think you are in your career as far as that stuff goes, DC and Marvel?
Oh, I mean, like, I'm doing some covers for Marvel right now. I honestly thought Superwoman would be my last gig at DC, and I was fine. Truth be told, I'm not fast enough to do a monthly book, and also, truth be told, the iterations of a lot of the characters I love don't exist anymore, and I don't want to peddle in nostalgia. So, like, if I was to do a Legion of Superhero book, the cast I would want to use doesn't exist. It's an older cast. But that readers have moved on, right? And there's a whole new... I'm currently much more interested in new and fresh talent taking on these characters and creating it anew for a new and fresh audience in the way it was for me, right? Like, I was really fortunate to come up at a time when a lot of creators, not much older than me, were turning out really extraordinary work, and it changed my life. I've had a great life. I've had 30 years in comics. I'm fine moving aside, doing other side projects or things like Black Label books, while we get fresh new takes on these characters, and they need to be reinvented. To get slightly academic, one thing Kelly Sue and I have spoken about a little bit, a favorite quote of mine from an author named Karen Armstrong is that there's no orthodox version of a myth. That myths have to grow and evolve and change over time to continue to be relevant to their readers. And I believe that's true with comics as well, right? Like, I don't think stagnancy does us any good. And so I look forward to seeing what fresh new faces do with this material.
I get it, and that's fine. Hey, all right, here's an interesting question, because certainly it's been making the rounds. Have either of you been approached in a Substack capacity?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the problem is, I mean, I think the Substack model is phenomenal. Like,
yeah, sure.
You have some venture capitalists funding your books that you continue to own. Great, okay. The issue for Matt and I with Substack is the volume of work that we have right now. And for the Substack thing, you have to commit to a certain number of posts per year, a certain number of newsletters per year.
Yeah.
And we have this like I have a folder for the Substacks that I'm subscribed to, and I'm 400 unread Substack newsletters behind.
Yes.
So I love it. I think it's a really great idea. We are trying to figure out how we could make it work in a way that felt like we were being smart and responsible about it.
Yes.
And then there's another. We're considering it on two fronts, and I can't really get into it more than that.
Okay.
But yeah, the problem for us is both trying to figure out what is the plan to be both smart and responsible, and also just the workload that Matt and I have. So folks who are not super familiar with my work or my life, my husband is the comic book writer Matt Fraction, and he is on 2 huge projects right now, neither one of which have been announced. So yeah, so there's a thing with that. And I'm going to say, Nerdette says, my biggest issue with Substack is wanting to buy my floppies and support my favorite creators. It almost doubles the cost. Yeah, I totally get it. There's a math of, if you did like a $5 a month Substack, how many pages of comics could you provide for that to have it be of equal value? Like it's tricky. It
is tricky.
Totally get it, and I don't begrudge anyone who's like, no, thank you. Totally, absolutely understand that.
Yeah, I think the positive is, as an outsider, it's a grant of significant money to allow people to do creator-owned comics. It gives writers the opportunity to collaborate more with other artists. Kel, as you say, I think it is that newsletter responsibility that they ask of you. And it's fair given the amount of money that they're putting up. And it's a grant. It's not a loan. It's not upfront money. You got to pay it back. That's right. Pretty amazing. And also the other great thing is, you own the rights. You want to put it out as an image book or whatever publisher.
Yeah. So you developed the book or books through your Substack. You provide sort of behind the scenes materials and access to like first looks at stuff and, whatever it is. And then in the end, when it's done, you own the whole book, and then you walk it over to your favorite publisher and say, can we put out the trade of this? And they say, I don't have to pay you to produce it. Yes, please. Let's put out the trade of that, So, I mean, it's crazy good deal. But
keep going.
But, there's just the question of there are unfortunately only so many hours in the day, and I'm not fast.
Well, and you got other shit going on.
Yeah.
I'm hip. Yeah. No, I get it. Absolutely. Like I said, this is a great, very 1% in the best way deal that is only being afforded to a very select.
Oh, it's a champagne problem for sure. Oh no, should I take the venture capitalist money to do my comics? It is absolutely. Here's the thing too, is that like, it's a great deal. It is not super life-changing for Matt and I, but it could be potentially life-changing for the artists that we work with, because like traditionally when you do creator-owned work, you're sacrificing the work for hire page rate, which comes like clockwork. When you turn those pages in, you get paid for those pages, right? 2 weeks, whatever it is. And you have a solid page rate. Although that is a whole other conversation, but, and then that is what you're getting instead. You're getting the reliable, immediate money instead of having ownership, right? So if you do comics through the Substack model and you use the same, the setup that we use when we do creator owned is, we pay our work for hire people get first dollar out. So that's usually colorist and letterer. They get paid their full rate we want to match their DC or Marvel rate, and they get that as soon as they turn the work in, same as always. So if there's any advance monies, or if we're fronting the money, those people get paid immediately.
Yeah.
And then the artists will get what's left of any advance plus first dollar out until their page rate is met for the whole project. Then we get paid after that until our page rate is met, and a writer's page rate is significantly lower than an artist's page rate because of the amount of time it takes to do those things. This might be really boring businessy conversation for people, but if any of these folks are aspiring creators, you really need to know the business aspect of this. It's incredibly important. This is your job. You have to know the business aspect. You have to run your business, especially if you're doing work for hire, because as much as we love these companies can't love you back. There are people in the companies who may care very deeply about you, but the company doesn't love you. It will not take care of you. It doesn't care where you live when you're old. Okay. And so you have to manage your own career. So when we do these creator-owned books, because it is important to have things that you own, when we do these creator-owned books, then we have work for hire paid first. Then anything that's left of the advance goes towards the artist page rate. Then the first dollar out of profit goes to finish out the artist's page rate, and then the writer's page rate, and then anything after that is split between the writer and the artist, right? And that's generally how that works.
Yeah.
And other people have other models. That's our model, and we feel like it's fair. And then, but so the thing about that is there are pluses and minuses then to doing that versus doing the work for hire DC or Marvel books. Important advantages to each. Substack allows you to do both.
Yeah.
So you could have your full page rate the minute you turn the pages in, and you're going to get ownership and that first dollar of profit, which you don't have to pay back the page rate now. The first dollar of profit is divided between the owners of the book. And so it's just, I don't know. The only reasons not to do it are the reasons we haven't done it yet, which are that we don't know that we have time to be responsible about it. And, we don't want to promise something we can't deliver. We need to come up with a really good plan if we are going to do it. And I can't even write an email quickly. So 2 of these a week. And then, there's just some part of me that's like, does anybody want to hear from me twice a week? Oh my God. That seems like a lot. I'm not sure I want to hear from me twice a week.
Kel, this is an inside baseball show. So truly, I do appreciate that detail. And I know a lot of the people that are watching and listening come to Word Balloon to hear how to run their business properly and stuff. Phil, and thank you, Phil, because people have a lot of questions. First of all, they would Leandro says would love to see a Phil creator-owned comic. Love his art. Any plans?
Me too.
There are actually.
Attaboy.
I'm preparing some art to send for the announcement tomorrow.
So, son of a bitch, man! I'm a day too early. God damn it!
You're a day too late. To be fair, it's something I've wanted to work on for a long time, but it's also part of my late in life agenda because, as Kelly Sue talked about, and as we've talked about, I'm not fast, and I'm also really interested in continuing sort of teaching and putting forward young artists. I had a really extraordinary first decade in comics because I had great mentors. The people that hired me, my editors, teachers, so I'm really, really big on mentorship, as Kelly Sue is too. So this gig that I just got, I'm actually excited because it will allow me to do two things I love, which is put out a creator-owned book and use new talent to do most of the work. And I mean that not to like sit back and watch them, but it will create a forum for them to actually be published creators. So I'll probably be doing some of the curating and designing. And yeah, it should be announced very soon. And it's not huge, but it's enough. And it's sort of Substack-ish. And again,
Great.
Yeah. So
that's great to hear, Phil. No, that's
Substack
fantastic.
adjacent. I'll say that for now.
Okay. Well, people are saying they would love to see something creator-owned from you. Other people are saying would love to see an art book from you. Here. So,
I don't know if that'll ever happen. I'm again more interested. I had this opportunity to do all these things I love, some creator-owned stuff, some mentoring, and putting some new, and hopefully putting a writer or artist or two out there in the world. So hopefully, later next year.
Guys, I got a few years on you, but we're all kind of in that middle-aged world.
Yeah.
And I think when we hit this era, it's like we still have lots of time to produce really interesting stuff. However, we're where the clock is running. So work less, but do more of what we want to do. I'm so with you guys on that.
And it's funny because I think the conversation makes young people uncomfortable. It doesn't make me uncomfortable at all. Like I'm very at peace with my own mortality and just want to, be mindful and thoughtful and respectful of all of the people and circumstances that have taught me so much. So I'm doing something with it,
Agreed. Absolutely. Here, I want to scroll up a little bit. Someone asked, here, Cypher Life asked, do you ever write a story for DC and think this is too good? I'm going to save it for creator owned.
No, ideas don't work like that for me. Generally speaking, I can't think of like if I don't tend to generate an independent idea for a work for hire character. So it's usually something like, hey, what would be your take on Aquaman? I don't know. What would be my take on Aquaman? Let me think about Aquaman, and then I'll generate some Aquaman ideas, not like I have this idea, can I bolt it onto Aquaman,
I do.
And then so when I'm intrigued by a particular something, I don't know, like when I find one of those sweater thread ideas, it's usually we think so too, David.
Yes.
Yes, we're very delighted by this, both of us.
They're both 3 days apart for the audio audience who doesn't see the comment, but yeah, you guys.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes. Somebody was saying that that our birthdays are 3 days apart. And that is in fact true. We're like almost exactly the same age.
Yes.
We're both born in July.
I'm slightly older.
Like minutes. But I mean, I should be grateful for that. Why am I like, like, yeah, old man. What's it like up there? But yeah, so ideas tend not to work that way for me. So I don't go like, ooh, I'm saving this one. It just kind of is like it's generated for a particular thing.
Now I'm older than the two guys, but I was telling Phil off the air, and you probably know, Kel, maybe you don't know, but all right, November 30th is Rucka, December 1st is Fraction. I'm December 2nd.
Oh, nice.
Isn't that cute? So yeah. I love that. And it's like, yeah, that's awesome, man. All three of us. So I immediately start texting it with Greg, and it's like, all right, happy birthday, everybody. Here we go.
Here we go.
So,
yeah.
I got a couple clicks ahead of them, but that's all right. I don't mind. I don't mind my age either, Kel. If anything, and I'm sure you guys maybe felt the same way based on our conversation today. If anything, it galvanized us to say, okay, what do you want to do that you haven't done yet? and just don't waste time. And
Yes.
that's how I take what I'm doing as just don't waste time and, do the projects that you really want to do, and also don't suffer fools. And that, goes hand in hand. So yeah.
And also, like, I wish you well on your journey. Like, I don't need to come after people. I don't need to, like, you do you.
Yep.
It's all good.
I'm with you. Absolutely. All right. It's Wayne, but he calls himself Wayne Rousseau. And he wants to know, Phil, any chance of an artist edition of your work? Would love to see scans of your original artwork. Here. Any thoughts on that, or control over that possibly?
You mean for Historia?
Well, a story would be a great version of that, but also we could see, past Wonder Woman runs of yours, both writing and drawing. I mean, whatever. Or other things.
I mean, I have the interesting thing about working digitally is I have saved versions of every page I did in numerous iterations from pencils to ink. So there's probably 15 or 20 versions of each page. And my thought was, I saved in case of emergencies. They were just backups, but also with the hope that one day they would be collected in some format or animated or something like that. I am strangely not at all interested in an art book of my own stuff. Like, it doesn't even occur to me to generate something like that. I do have what has been very interesting to me is to look back at. I've been very fascinated by work I did when I first got into the business. I was looking back at Tempest, for example, and kind of blown away at how. Well, I think some of the drawings are more rudimentary. Some of the storytelling is actually quite wonderful, and it was really fascinated by what I was able to do. The sort of work that I made instinctually, right before I had learned no. This was before editors had told me no. It's one of the reasons I love teaching young people and working with young people, or I say fresh, it doesn't necessarily have to mean chronologically young, who have not been told they can't do something yet in the best way, right? Like, anything is possible, so try it. So the stuff I would ever want to showcase in a book like that is probably a lot older or very recent stuff. There's a whole middle ground, the past few years, which is not super interesting to me, but the end result is there's nothing planned. It would never occur to me. I'm not interested in that, but I love knowing that there are other people are interested in that.
That's awesome.
Maybe in Historia there will be an art book.
Fair enough.
I'm going to make fun of you for just a quick second. The funniest things will be like he would text me like, here's 4 versions of Hera's shoes. Which shoes do you think she should wear here? Which of these 4 versions of her shoes? Or maybe barefoot. Here's one where she's barefoot. Like,
that's great.
Yeah.
There are a lot.
That's great, Phil.
To be fair, on this, again, part of it was because this was special to me. So I wanted to get it right. I was telling Kelly Sue, and I think we agree, you can't get it. Nothing's perfect, right? Like, I think people thought I was trying to do something perfect. And maybe it's semantics, maybe it's splitting hairs, but it wasn't like I thought every line was going to be flawless, but I wanted to make sure that the imagery was right for the moment. And so a lot of design decisions went into that, and so a lot of characters had multiple iterations and different palettes and different, Hera had like 3 different sets of sandals until we committed to one. And that was the fun of digital work, is it allowed, I mean, of course it slows the process down, it's terrible, but it also allowed for everything to feel right along the way.
Oh, it was so cool though. It was like going shopping with Hera. Like, no, go try on the other one.
Right.
You know?
And the other thing that was very interesting was trying multiple color palettes and special effects. And it was proof. I'm really hoping that the colorists on this work get some sort of acknowledgement for just the volume of work they were asked to do. I think I will get a lot of credit for things that ultimately were collaboration between us. And I just don't think colorists generally get enough attention in our world anyway. I asked them to do an enormous amount, and they really rose to the challenge in almost every way. And if there was something I'm like, they'll never understand what I'm going to ask, I would just do the color, create a special effect or something. But what was interesting is, again, I really do hope there's some sort of behind the scenes book. I'm thinking one's image, particularly of Aphrodite, where she was colored two very, very different ways, and the effect is vastly different. One is quite ominous, the other is sort of more majestic. Same image, just different colors, and it would have changed the way we receive the story had we gone one direction or another. We ultimately went one direction. I just bring that up because I do think I do hope people see these permutations and understand just how important color was to this project.
Mm-hmm. And also, I don't even know the names of the flatters. And
right.
They should get fruit baskets, like, oh my God. Like,
terrible. I mean, it was just, yes, if folks walk away hearing me talk about anything on this project from this, podcast that we're doing, or it's please respect the color of some that work and let them know if you like it, because the volume of work was enormous and they did an amazing job.
100%, man. Absolutely. I like Ramsey's question here. And Phil, I'm hoping you'll have something to say about this too. But knowing that Kel has done her share of translating, God damn it, now I'm blanking, French, Jane Fonda, Barbarella. You did the Barbarella stuff,
yep.
Kel. And Black Label format, as Ramsey says, is really versatile and very much like a French comic album. Were any of these comics or illustrations influences on Historia?
To be fair, the greatest influences on Historia visual that came from the Pinterest board that Kelly Sue and I shared.
And also Muka and Klimt.
Klimt was a big deal.
Cool.
Muka, of course. But I would say fashion more than comics.
Yes.
Was the biggest influence on this work for me. I stole, and I use that word deliberately, a ton of shit. I think it's all artists do. I'm just hoping I stole well. The amount of choices I made that were inspired by fashion, I think far outweighs the amount of choices I made by looking at other comics.
Fair enough. I understand. Comic Boom, really, really great question here. What do you think is the best lesson that humanity can learn from the Amazons through the Historia lens? How do you think your view is different from the traditional take on Wonder Woman mythology? There's an essay question, but I think a good one.
Could you put that back up?
Sure, buddy. You got it. Stand by. Boom.
Well, I think one of the things that might make our take different is the idea was to do a Homerian epic with a woman at the center, not to do a utopia. So this was actually a big conversation that Phil and I had early on about violence, right? And our approaches to violence in this book have particular rules. And while I think that there is and I'm choosing my words very carefully here. I think that there can be a tendency to it's well-intentioned. And I think this is where Marston and I vehemently part ways, is this idea that women are biologically superior, more serene people, more given to working together and no egos, and also we're very gentle, and we have a kind of more responsible use of power. And I think, though this can be lovely and flattering, and again, well-intentioned, I think it's another way of putting women in boxes and making us other.
Interesting.
And I think that women are complicated and diverse human beings. And, you know, what's the, like, I ask no advantage over my brother, only that he take his foot off of my neck. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like it's probably, I think it's boot. I don't remember. But anyway,
I like it.
yeah. This isn't about how women are so different from men. It's centered around a woman's experience in terms of there are certain things that culturally we have been subject to that men have not in quite the same way. But oh, hey, Mike, I love you. Sorry.
Mike Gilman chiming in. Absolutely.
Yes. For the folks
audio audience.
Mike Oming just said, "Hey, you guys, this is amazing." So I love Mike Oming. But anyway, we're just sort of trying to return to my thought here. It is no, that was me. I interrupted myself because I was so happy to see my friend Mike. I think if we are to achieve the level of equality in our world that we want, it is an equality of opportunity, and we need to understand that most of what makes the woman's experience of the world different from a man's experience of the world is the cultural constructions of the world, right? So women women have a tendency to not ask directly for what they need. So, not because we are biologically manipulative. Okay, there's nothing that's like feline and sneaky about a woman, right? It's not like all cats are not girls and all boys are not dogs. You know, that's not like that. It doesn't work like that, right? It's culturally, women have traditionally been punished for asking for what they need directly, and so women have developed culturally strategies to get their needs met in roundabout ways, right? And every woman is raised in our culture to understand that her personal safety depends on the comfort of the men in power around her. And so she makes sure he's comfortable because that's how she stays safe, right? Because if he is not, she can be in physical danger. And there's even some very interesting conversations to be had about the cultural construction of bodies. So, and now we get a little bit into gender essentialism, which is really not a direction I want to go. But, you know, if you do think about women's bodies being smaller, or, you know, there are certainly biological components, but there are also cultural components that have contributed to those evolutionary developments. There's a lot of incredible scholarship on all of these things. And all of this is to say that our Amazons and all of our tribes of Amazons, who are all very different, they are people, and as people, they are complicated and imperfect and human and relatable. And if we talk about Hippolyta as a Homerian hero, Homerian heroes are not 100% aspirational. And so there are in early, remember this is planned for 9, I almost said episodes. It's planned for 9 episodes. Remember, this is planned for 9 books. Okay. So, and 9 chunky books, 9 64 books too. So we have a long way to go to get to the end here. And it's planned from the moment that the goddesses conceive of the Amazons to go until the moment that Steve Trevor lands on the beach, which is when the story of Wonder Woman traditionally begins. Yes. The inciting incident of which is a man.
Yep.
And so this is, the idea is to tell a story about complicated human beings who are living a woman's experience of this world. So when the question says, what are we going to learn from these Amazons? Well, I mean, I hope you would learn from the stories of these people, but it's not didactic in a utopian way. It's not like Marston's, well, if you just put the women in charge, then everything would be fine. Like, look, I'm all for women in charge, and I think we should have more women in charge. But that's only because women have not been allowed to be in charge, not because I think that that there is a biological thing that makes us better. I think we are more alike than our culture would have us believe.
I'm with you, buddy. This is why I love having you on, Kel. Seriously. That's great. And I don't mean to cut you off. Please continue.
No. I think
that's beautiful, buddy.
Quite enough. And I'm sure that will completely blow up in my face. But
shut up. No, that was great.
I did want to chime in one thing. And this
Please,
is
Phil.
Sort of a tack on. And so it is my experience, having worked with Wonder Woman and these characters for a long time, I'm not sure what humanity will learn from our Amazons. But typically, I think, for me, what's most exciting about these characters, historically, is, as Kelly Sue's talked about, they ask of their audience, any audience who actively engages them, to ask of themselves how they feel about 2 things, which I think are so vital to our literally the world we live in, which are sex and gender and war. Those are 2 big ideas baked into the DNA of these characters from their creation. And there are all sorts of, there's plenty of academic works which tackle them all, and I would encourage people to go read them. I've read plenty of them. But the thing that I love about Wonder Woman, and one of the things I think is actually very interesting academically, because I tend to approach Wonder Woman through sort of a queer male lens, right? Like, which is super important.
Yeah.
And I actually freaking loved being challenged by Kelly Sue, who's looking at them through a decidedly female feminist lens, right? So there's a very interesting occasional clash between queer and feminist ideals. Most of the time, though, sort of in, I think, lockstep, just personally. But asking these big questions.
And always respectfully, I should add.
Tons of, oh my God. Oh, like no fighting at all. Just really, like, and I love, and I'm just obsessed with, I would argue, actually, well, not argue, but your approach and the way you think, it's transformative. Like, so the past 3 years have been really transformative years for me, thinking about this material and this topic more broadly, right?
And Phil,
Oh, no,
I'm sorry. Phil invited me to a queer comics book club in New York when I was there, which was one of the best nights of my entire life. Just
and theirs.
Oh my God! Please give them my love. I was so. I enjoyed myself so much. I learned so much. It was just great fun and really, really thinky, lovely human beings.
I'm obsessed with you continually to this day. My friend Tony, will not stop talking about you. But to wrap my thought, so that we can move on, about, again, what humanity learns, not really sure what I have learned, and what I hope others learn who engage with our work, right, is to have big thoughts, again, about how we think about how gender and sex affect, and how we think about these things affect our daily lives, how we interact with each other. And again, this other question, not simply about violence, but about war specifically, and what that is and how it impacts us, and what that word truly means, right? So anyway, that the reason I love this project so much is because it forced me in the best ways to re-evaluate all these things that I feel like I've thought about. It's all I think about, and now I'm thinking about it again and again and again, because of Miss Kelly Sue. So it's terrific stuff, and I hope people engage. I hope that's how our Amazons transform. It's they make people.
Look at you bringing that around. That was very well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think too, it's important to say that one of the things that I love about shared universe superhero comics is there's no one true version. There's your favorite version. You know? So it's okay. It's wonderful. It's celebratory for there to be all these different takes, and you find the one that speaks to you.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. No, again.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think truly Phil's history with the character, Kel, you both have been thinking a lot about this, and it comes through in the work. And again, as the cisgender old man white guy, I can say honestly, what I love about this collaboration is that beginnings that I think has been missing from the Amazon story, and also just the world, like I said, the world of Krypton kind of feel.
That's great. I love that. I so love that.
Well, that's the thing, and I mean, truly, the history of Wonder Woman deserves that same kind of backstory, and I think you guys are delivering with Historia, no question. So truly, we can. I mean, I feel bad because I know it's getting close to dinner time for Phil and Kel. I'm sure you got shit to do. Yeah. We can wrap here because I think that was really a beautiful way to kind of sum up what you guys are trying to do with Historia. It comes out on November 30th. There, I'm going to put up the cover again. Stand by. Boom. Poor Kel.
Look at that. Oh, and there's so many things that I'm really excited about for you guys to read, and we can talk about later. That there's a thing in the second book too. I'm going to completely implode in the time it takes for that to come out, and then there's one thing in the third book so far. I'm not done with the third book yet. There's one thing in the third book so far that I'm really, really giddy about too. That's just what that'll be like spring of next year, or no, spring will be Jean, so it'll be summer of next year for the Nicola one, and I'm probably just going to die.
Well, yeah, sorry. I'm going to be bugging you to come back, and maybe we'll have these same conversations with Jean and Nicola as they come out.
Yes.
Totally.
Oh, of course. Buddy, yes. Are you kidding me? Well, you and I could do the Kelly Sue Hour every goddamn week. You know that, as far as I'm concerned.
That we should definitely do that. And then also, sure. Phil, look at me. I'm volunteering your time. Phil and I should come back and do a director's commentary.
Oh, that'd be great, guys. Truly, like December or Jan,
yes, when you guys all have your books, come back and we'll do a page
great.
by page read together, and we will point out the things that you don't know because they're hidden in the backgrounds.
Oh, that means so much to me, guys. It
Wasn't
truly
it fun?
feel like, you know, she's
That'll
already
be
obligating
so
you, so you
fun.
gotta
I
go.
love that.
So please, let's try and schedule that for December. That'd be lovely. That would be amazing.
All right.
So,
That sounds
absolutely. Well done, kids. I'm so proud of both of you, and I love this book, and I'm so glad that DC is giving you guys the opportunity to tell this kind of story and
Yeah.
subsequent issues from Gene and Nicola, and who knows who may come. Everybody go out. You got to get this book. I'm telling you, this is going to be a very hot book. November
Okay.
30th. Go ahead.
I'm jumping in with two more things.
Do it.
David Santos asked back here, and I remembered that I saw it and wanted to answer it. What is your opinion for the wound in Hippolyta and Diana? That means that he's listened to me talk about writing superheroes before. And I will say I have an answer to that question, but it would spoil a lot of stuff. So we can talk about that later. But you're right, and thank you for listening to me talk. Oh my gosh. And then I don't remember what the other thing was. You guys, I'm sorry. Never mind.
Fair enough. That's all right. Well, you could review the videotape. Let's go to the instant replay and find out exactly what Kel might have been thinking of. No. And a lot of people have asked questions that we already covered earlier in the conversation. So I've always said, all right, rewind and you'll get your answer. Don't worry about it. November 30th is the day that Historia comes out, Black Label.
I remember.
Go.
So when you have your book, if you love it, and I hope that you love it, will you please tell DC Comics that you want books 4 through 9?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Let them know. I don't know how you let them know. I don't know. Tweet to them, Instagram to them. I'm sure. Write them letters, emails, something. I'm not sure how that works, but do that.
Get the campaign
please.
going. Absolutely.
If you like it, if you love it.
Agreed. I think they will, Kel. And well done, Phil. I'm so pleased for both of you. You knocked it out of the park, and it's so exciting to be able to talk to you guys about this. And come back maybe next month, and we can do the annotated version. That would be lovely.
I love that idea.
So fun. Okay.
That's
Thank you
great.
very much.
Everybody, thanks for watching. Good job, everybody. Great questions. I love it. Very smart audience, and I expect no less from the League of Word Balloon listeners. Everybody stay